Cardano wasn't just assembled from previously existing technology like a lot of other cookie cutter smart contract blockchains. It was researched, engineered, and architected to achieve something very different, something more in the spirit of Satoshi's original invention, but with the addition of modern levels of expressivity. We're now starting to see the fruits of those labors in terms of high degrees of composability in Cardano, and especially in Cardano DeFi. Ready? Let's go. Today, we're going to discuss some of the surprises that came with the WingRiders launch, the big IOHK rundown of the last 10 days, mainstream media deciding to call us psychopaths, some Pavia news, an Eternl upgrade, and milk on Milkomeda. If you are excited to see Cardano DeFi finally unfurling its sails, or if you're enjoying these videos each weekday, I'd love it if you would consider delegating to the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. We've had a couple of great epics. The last two completed epics, we've minted more blocks than the online probability calculator said we would. This epic, we've already created 6 blocks. What is this nonsense about composability? Are you trying to talk to me about some old guys in wigs making some old-fashioned music? Because I'm not here for music stuff, my guy. I'm here for crypto stuff. Fear not, we are talking crypto stuff. Wikipedia tells us composability is a system design principle that deals with the interrelationship of components. A highly composable system provides components that can be selected and assembled in various combinations to satisfy specific user requirements. And this obviously applies to information systems. You can imagine how valuable these kinds of principles are, especially in a blockchain, especially in DeFi, if you've got a bunch of different components and they can be selected and assembled in various combinations to satisfy different use cases. Today, we saw composability in Cardano DeFi suddenly appear before our eyes. Like magic, as if Professors McGonagall and Dumbledore drank too much butterbeer and finally got to have their own private carnival night. Magic. But here it was. We found out when WingRiders launched today, we found out a few different things. One of the things we already knew about, but it was interesting to finally see it. We've had a lot of projects, a lot of DeFi platforms in Cardano talk about the possibility of having ADA staking built into the platform. You might be depositing your ADA in their platform to do various things, but your ADA would also be staked. People have characterized this as the risk-free rate of return in Cardano, the ADA staking rate. I won't call it risk-free because in these types of scenarios, you're still giving up custody of your ADA, and to me, that's not risk-free, but I can understand why people would characterize this as the risk-free rate of return of ADA staking. But the interesting thing is that this has already been in existence in Cardano. This is something we've had for quite a while, ADA staking. The beauty of Cardano and the way it's been designed and built is that we can have this ADA staking return, and we can take that component, that piece of Cardano, and we can combine it with some of these other things. In this case, an In-DEX, an automated market maker, decentralized exchange. And you can deposit your ADA into a liquidity pool, become a liquidity provider, and do all the farming stuff that comes off of that. And at the same time, your ADA can still be staked. This might seem like a small thing to us because we've been expecting this for a long time. Here we're finally seeing it, which is amazing. But it's actually not a small thing when you consider a lot of other Gen 3 blockchain platforms are counting on custodial staking. They don't have a means of ensuring the right behavior in their proof of stake systems aside from slashing. If slashing is the name of the game, if they're going to take your coins, get rid of your coins, if you or the validator you're staked to engage in any kind of bad behavior, they need for that block validator to have custody of your coins. They can't be locked up in some random DeFi platform somewhere. They need to be locked up with that validator so that the system can slash your coins if the validator does something that the blockchain is trying to discourage. Obviously, for those types of blockchains, just the act of staking is not a risk-free event because you're giving up custody, and the whole system is designed to create a risk that you lose your coins. That's how the whole incentive system in the proof of stake systems they're employing, that's how the whole thing works. You are intentionally not getting a risk-free outcome. I mean, you might get a good outcome or you might get a bad outcome, but there's a risk you get that bad outcome. Unlike Cardano, where we have self-custodied staking, but because they don't have self-custodied staking in a lot of the other platforms, it's going to be much harder for them to achieve this level of composability of the staking. I mean, they might come up with some tricky way to be able to achieve something that looks like this, but just the fact that you must lock up your coins with the block validator makes it much trickier to achieve what WingRiders is executing on right here. I mean, this isn't a conceptual thing. This is up for grabs. This is in action right now. Here's the whole page on staking on the WingRiders DEX, and you can see it works exactly like they told us it would work. There's a pool. All these liquidity pools that contain ADA have a pool that can be voted on by the liquidity providers providing the ADA, if I'm understanding correctly. And that vote can change. They can change pools if they want to. There's a governance aspect to it. This is something that's going to be very hard for other blockchains that don't have self-custodied staking to achieve, because the interesting thing about Cardano self-custodied staking is that the staking can happen whether it's self-custodied or you're giving up custody to somebody else. The main thing is you don't have to give up custody to the block validator, which is, I think, the big mistake that these other blockchains with slashing have made. The other thing we learned today was actually a big surprise. I didn't see anybody talking about this ahead of time. I'm sure people knew. Obviously, the team knew, and that makes me think a lot of other people knew. But whoever knew was pretty quiet about it, because I didn't see anybody talking about this. And that was that WingRiders would have not just one stablecoin, but two. They had wrapped Tether and wrapped USDC. This is a pretty big step up for Cardano DeFi. Why? Because traders don't always want to be in crypto. Sometimes they want to move right back over into fiat, or at least something that represents the safety of fiat. I guess we can't even say safety of fiat given what's been happening with the US dollar and the crazy inflation rates that were revealed today. But people definitely find a lot of utility in retreating back into fiat. And now they've got it in Cardano DeFi in the form of these wrapped stablecoins. Obviously, some people would argue that this is more of a step forward in terms of interoperability with another blockchain than it is one of composability. And I think they'd probably be right. That's probably a better characterization. Here you can see exactly how it works. You've got USDC, something like USDC ERC20 over here. It goes across a bridge to Milkomeda, which is obviously an EVM compatible sidechain of the Cardano ecosystem. And then from Milkomeda, it can enter the Cardano ecosystem. This diagram actually brings up another huge area of Cardano composability. You can see here what we've known for a long time, and that's that things like tokens, whether fungible or non-fungible in Cardano, aren't creatures that are beholden to smart contracts like they are in the Ethereum ERC20 world. Cardano tokens can be native tokens with the same rights and privileges on the base layer as ADA. This is a huge advantage. We don't even yet know what additional levels of composability might be possible when all of the tokens you might mint are first-class citizens on the base layer. One simple example of this that we've heard about, but we haven't seen put into practice yet, is Babel fees, where the fees for transactions involving native tokens might be able to be paid in those native tokens. We've covered it several times on this channel. This would obviously be a huge boon for the organizers and developers of projects who might be able to pay the huge fees involved in big mint events in the actual native token that they themselves can create more of if they need to pay those fees. There's a huge amount of activity in Cardano right now, so much so that IOHK had to put together a thread just to go over all of the things that have happened in the last 10 days. And it's a lot of the launches that you already know about, collaborations, new projects, ICOs of projects we already knew about, new types of marketplaces. I mean, there are new functionality on DEXs that were already existing. There are a lot of things going on. I think this is going to be the trend going forward. I think we're going to see less individual attention for projects just because there are so many projects in Cardano now. And a year from now, it's going to be a crazy exponential number compared to how many we have now. You know, you're definitely winning the battle when your adversary starts calling you names. Here we have an article published originally in The Sun, it looks like, called Bitcoin Fans Are Psychopaths Who Don't Care About Anyone, Study Shows. The study they're referring to apparently was done by scientists at Queensland University of Technology. They did a personality survey of 566 people. And of course, the interesting thing is who was in the sample. In this sample, only 1 in 4 people actually owned crypto, and 2/3 showed an interest in crypto investing. So who were the rest of the people? Were there people who didn't fall into either one of those groups, neither owned crypto or showed an interest in crypto investing? However, they decided this was the right group of people. It looks like this article came to the conclusion that based on whatever the researchers actually put out in the world, that many investors of crypto exhibit signs of the dark tetrad. This already sounds like some kind of a description of the bad character, the nemesis in a fantasy novel, right? He has the dark tetrad. So no, this is a real thing. The dark tetrad apparently is 4 unsavory traits, including narcissism, Machiavellianism, psychopathy, and sadism. This sounds like the group of people you want to invite over to your house for a house party. Let's get the narcissists, the Machiavellianists, the psychopaths, and the sadists. We'll get a bunch of whiskey in them and just kind of see what happens. Sounds like a great time. So as you go through the article, you kind of see that they're just generally referring to crypto people, and they try to come up with explanations how each of those very bad traits, makes them, show more impulsiveness, more risk taking, all those kind of things that you'd expect. But then you get to the bottom of the article and you see one of the researchers mentioning, if you happen to be a Bitcoin or other crypto holder, you may or may not exhibit these traits. We studied only a subset of people interested in crypto who do have these traits. So probably, I think if you rigorously looked at their selection procedure and the people who were actually involved in this group, and maybe even how they interpreted the data, I think different researchers might come to different conclusions about whether or not this was like an adequate sample and the analysis of the data. But my real question is, why would you publish an article like this and say Bitcoin fans are psychopaths who don't care about anyone? Like, what's the intention of an article like this? It's definitely to pejoratively characterize crypto in general. I mean, here, what we know here is that of 566 people who happen to be willing to do a survey about their personalities, given that they're crypto people, I mean, I would question what kind of crypto people would actually submit themselves to a personality survey in the first place. But of those people, these researchers identified narcissism, Machiavellianism, psychopathy, and sadism. But we're still kind of in that phase where mainstream media, large portions of mainstream media, really, really want to villainize crypto for some reason. While some projects are launching this week, other projects that have already launched or already partially launched are still grinding away in the background. I like that we have both. We basically have every stage of project in the Cardano ecosystem right now, and it makes it super interesting. Here's Pavia. they've already distributed their land parcels, and the metaverse isn't up and running yet. But we've been getting kind of some little trickles of information about what this metaverse is going to look like as the months have transpired with Pavia. Here we find out we will shortly be updating the first cohort of successfully verified asset creators. These are Pavia compatible assets, PCAs. These are things like buildings you might put on your Pavia land parcels. By achieving verification, they have shown commitment to their projects for the long term. Initially, you'll be able to validate these creators in our Discord. I really like that Pavia seems to be paying a lot of attention to these little details. We already know what's going on with the avatars, the Ready Player Me avatars. We can already sort of check that box. And immediately people started asking questions. What are these buildings going to look like? What about things we put on the land? What are these things going to be like? So Pavia created this Pavia compatible asset standard, this sort of evolving standard. And here we have a cohort of verified PCA creators. This is kind of what I want to see. I want to see a metaverse project thinking about all these different issues. The attitude seems to be not, let's see how quickly we can launch something that we can slap the metaverse project label on. It's more a slow, deliberate process of trying to check all the boxes and take care of all the little details, including how do we make sure that we have verified, we've vetted PCA creators and not people just randomly trying to sell assets that people can throw up on their Pavia land. Hopefully they're being just as rigorous in the build out of their actual virtual world. That's the part we don't really know about. And I think we won't really know until we actually see it. So fingers crossed on that. Also, if you've tried to use the Eternl wallet recently with your ledger like I have, you might have noticed some problems. Eternl was telling you your firmware version wasn't compatible and you need to upgrade the firmware, something like that. We saw this post today. Google finally approved version 1.6.2 on the Chrome Web Store. It fixes the ledger issue. I hope this is the same one that apparently a bunch of us were encountering, because it's a lot better to have your assets on your hardware wallet. We also got news today that the MusicSwap Milk token is now on the Milkomeda version of their DEX. I know a lot of people were waiting for that. Finally, if there's any particular topic you would like to see covered in the Cardano 360 show, now's your big chance. IOHK is asking for your input in this short survey. I hope everybody's having a great week, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.